Welcome to Engaging ESG, where we consider, challenge, and celebrate the evolving world of environmental, social, and governance communications. I'm Jennifer Owen, Senior Director of Marketing at Caesar.
And I'm Katie Callens, Global Sustainability Lead at Adobe. For Season 3, we're talking with climate communications leaders who are shaping the future of sustainability messaging. From connecting with stakeholders to crafting compelling impact stories, we'll uncover the strategies that worked and learn from those that didn't.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the field, you'll find practical tips and insights in every episode.
And whether you're working on your first sustainability report or reimagining your organization's climate narrative, these conversations will help you navigate the complexities of ESG communications. Let's get started.
Katie, hello. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Jen. How are you?
I'm okay. I don't know. No, I'm great. So, we are having more and more conversations, and it's getting more and more interesting and fun, and we just keep broadening horizons. I don't know. How are you feeling?
Yes, this is like way more fun than I thought possible. I was like, invite all your friends on and nerd out about ESG. Like, is this just a pipe dream? But actually, the diversity of conversations that we've gotten to have with so many different voices at such a interesting inflection point, I think corporate at the space has also been such a treat. And that brings me to our guest today.
Oh, yes.
Who I got to meet a couple of years ago when he was on the stage at GreenBiz, leading GreenBiz.org at the time. And I was incredibly captivated by his experience, eloquence, and he's had even more of both those things since we first met a couple years ago. And so I know our listeners are really going to enjoy hearing from Jarami Bond. So a little bit more about him before we dive into the conversation. Jarami is the founder and executive producer at Bond Studio, which is a commercial film production company helping mission-driven organizations tell stories of social and environmental impact, accelerating their growth. He has partnered with organizations like B-Lab, Beneficial State Foundation, USGBC, and others. And in 2017, Jarami was named to GreenBiz 30 Under 30, and he also worked to build greenbiz.org and also worked in-house at Technion and Interface. He's an established public speaker at a lot of different conferences. And I just think in general, Jarami is such an important and interesting voice for us to have during this moment because he's kind of what I think of as like a sustainability polyglot. He has done the internal work driving sustainability. He's done the partnerships with the greenbiz.org. And now, Jarami, you're doing work consulting and you're deep in the film industry. So happy to have you here and excited to chat more.
Welcome to Engaging ESG.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Katie and Jennifer. It's awesome to be here. Love your show and grateful for the opportunity to bring some perspective, hang out a little bit, and get into some fun topics. So let's do it.
And use the word polyglot just in normal conversation.
I'm going to say, I love words. I would consider myself a linguist, and that is a new one. So I'm going to stab that.
Me too. I'm like, ooh, nice. You are the ultimate polyglot.
Speaking multiple languages, which is a lot of what we talk about here is engaging ESG. And maybe on that note, Jarami, first question for you. As someone who's really deep in the world of impact storytelling, how are you seeing this moment in time for all of us kind of communication professionals, folks trying to drive work across ESG topics?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. So, obviously, we're living in a highly complex time. In the wake of the new Trump administration, there are so many questions. There are so many organizations who are wrestling with the tension between what we've been striving toward, what kind of stories we've been telling over the past several years, and the pressure and the attacks on a lot of these impact areas that we're seeing today. And so prior to early January, a lot of conversations that I was having with other comms professionals were really centered around greenwashing and brownwashing. And obviously, these are still two areas of focus that in storytelling work, we have to maintain a level of cognizance around to make sure that we're telling stories the right way But I'm hearing a lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of hesitation to even take those first steps into telling the stories that amplify the impact work that their respective organizations are leading. So it's definitely a tricky era. I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
We'll get into them here shortly about how we move forward in this season. But yeah, it's definitely something that I haven't seen in quite some time.
Because do you think the work is continuing? I mean, I know we're like weeks into this, so it's hard to pull the brakes on stuff. But because is it a point of they're still staying with the work and we're not talking about it, or is the work going to slow? And I hope it's the former.
You're right. We're only a few weeks in. I've seen a little bit of a mixed bag. So on one hand, there have been companies and organizations who have publicly stated that they're planning to roll back certain initiatives that might have been catalyzed and launched in 2020 in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And I've also heard companies who are softening and slightly changing the nuances of how they're talking about racial equity and talking about climate action, still committed to the work underneath the surface, changing the way that they market and promote and discuss what that work actually is publicly. And so it's interesting, and we'll find this out in the coming weeks and months and years, but will the power of some of this work be compromised, even though the work is happening in the groundwater, right? Underground, is the fact that we're not talking about it as much externally going to take away from some of the momentum and the potential potency of this work and the potential for that work to lead to multiplier impact on a very macro level.
Such a good point. I am a firm believer in the power of private enterprise to do good. And I used to run an assessment program, Best Companies, and, Best Companies for Multicultural Women, Best Companies for Working Mothers, like all of that. And I came to really value that. And yes, we represented something like the Best Companies for Working Mothers represented about 150 million employees because you had big employers. But, that's a drop in the bucket for all. But it's the multiplier effect of anyone going for that talent to see in the professional services realm, that's what they're doing. It in the hospital realm, this is what they're doing. And if they don't know what the bar is, how do you run to jump over it? So, because without laws and regulations saying this stuff has to happen, I always liked it as a second lever to pull, but then you quiet the lever if you're not allowed to talk about it for whatever reason. That's,
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Happening for sure. And I would say, I've been reflecting over the past few days, and it brought me to an analogy. I was thinking about the collective vision that we've been striving toward for decades at this point.
Right.
And I think of this journey as a marathon. And in this moment in which things are getting difficult, I'm curious to see if all of us as professionals, organizations, are runners in this marathon, will we only run with perseverance when there's no incline, when the plan is at the max, when we're leaning downhill? And I'm starting to see organizations that as the elevation of that track begins to increase, people are bowing out of the race. And I think the challenge here is that many organizations will be judged in the future by how well they weathered this portion of the track. Gen Z, such a interesting and thoughtful and radical in some ways generation that demands a level of accountability from brands. They're not going to forget. Communities of color are not going to forget. And it's possible that it's going to take a lot to build back the trust that's being broken day by day. It's
Gen X is watching too, let me tell you. I mean, we just don't buy any of the fakery. We were lied to before. We came up through Reagan and, and the talking points of George W. Bush and the like. And it's like, no, we're watching. We see it. We see it too. that's a thing that I'm always concerned that you will be in these conferences and the like, and they'll say, well, the next generation will make it better. And I'm like, no, I'm still active in the workplace, man. I have a role to play as well. So no.
Circling back real quick, you used a term that I had not heard before. I was wondering if you could define it for us, Jarami. I think I can intuit, but I'd love to hear the definition of the term and maybe how we're going to see this. Actually, no, brown washing. I had not heard that term before. So if you wouldn't mind defining it for folks who maybe also haven't. We've talked about greenwashing a couple of times on this. But yeah, I just think some of also what you were alluding to around this like equity piece. We've talked a bit about just transition and quite frankly, like climate justice to me, and the equity inclusion is so integral to so much of the work happening and sustaining. And I worry that we're starting to move into a space where some of these things are being seen as optional.
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. So brownwashing has a few different definitions, but the one that I'm leaning into in this moment is basically the action of, in the context of storytelling, producing media, producing content that leverages the stories and experiences of communities of color to really amplify the work of an organization when in fact that organization isn't intimately connected to helping that organization or helping that community of color rather work through the systemic and solve for the systemic issues that have created the challenges and the problems in that particular community. And so this dynamic is actually a part of what inspired me to build Bond Studio in the way that I have, because for years early in my career, I would witness videos in which entities would enter communities of color with the cameras rolling, capture a beautiful video that amplifies a particular initiative or day of service. That video runs at a conference, the company gets an award for it, but that company isn't committed to really leaning in, engaging as active listeners, finding those community-based solutions to the problems that the company states it cares about. It was grievous for me because in the production space, especially when telling sensitive stories, there's a level of tact and care, relationship building and trust building that's important, because when community opens up in the context of an interview to share a story, that's a very vulnerable space. It's it can be a very high pressure space. And so there's a level of stewardship and respect that I wasn't really seeing, particularly in the storytelling realm tied to racial equity, climate justice, and things like that. And so I wanted to create an entity that allowed me to bring my own lived experience as well as the experience of my community and really allow those things to inform the way production happens in order to put community in the position to share stories in a safe space so that, you know, in the beautiful output of a story shared in the context of safety is a story that's authentic, a story that can resonate truly with an audience, because the best stories are the ones in which we see ourselves or we see somebody who we love or who we care about. And kind of going all the way back upstream to what I was sharing earlier, if a production company or a corporation enters a community with that kind of savioristic approach, it's more than likely going to create walls and barriers between them and the subjects of that story, the characters of that story, and very well could not really translate to the target audience as being a story that's truly authentic. And so that's a little bit about brownwashing and how we seek to tell stories in a way that really center and celebrate community and their experiences.
But love it. To build on that, so is there an example? Like, what's some great storytelling that you've seen, you've created, like where it all comes together?
Okay. I love that question, Jennifer. So we're currently in a series right now with one of our dear clients, the Beneficial State Foundation. BSF is a nonprofit that's working to really transform the banking industry and show larger financial institutions the opportunities that they have to grow and to deepen their impact within community by incorporating economic, social, and environmental practices into their operations. And they're also, through Beneficial State Bank, who's underneath their umbrella, showing everyday people that their deposits have power, that their deposits, once in a bank, don't just stop at that point of deposit.
Yeah.
They're invested into a variety of different industries and practices, some that are beneficial for people and climate and others that are highly detrimental. And so we've had the opportunity to tell stories for them. And we're in the midst of a series in which we're showcasing a few banks across the country and really diving in, obviously getting the interview in the corporate office with the thought leader or program lead, but more importantly, diving into that, build relationships and tell the stories of activists, small business owners, homeowners, and people who have been able to benefit from initiatives and programs that are centered in equitable and climate-friendly banking. And so this ground level storytelling sometimes looks like entering the homes and small businesses of everyday people, of underdogs, of people of color. So within the series, we had the opportunity to travel to Charlotte, New Orleans, Vancouver to film these stories. We've been able to film small business owners, homeowners, even community activists, nonprofit leaders who have benefited from programs and initiatives that create space for equitable funding.
Yeah.
Providing these organizations with access to capital. And so being able to tell these stories in some cases has meant being able to journey into people's homes and their businesses, into these highly vulnerable spaces. And so on one end of the spectrum, one thing that I seek to do as a producer is always communicate with subjects the ins and outs of production and what to expect, not just starting with, here are the interview questions, here are the elements of your story that we're looking to lean into. But hey, I'm so thankful that you're allowing us to come into our home. Sometimes production comes with 2 lights or 10 lights.
Right.
And so here's what it looks like. Is that okay with you? Like, working with people to make sure that we're
asking, not assuming.
Exactly. But on a deeper level, during pre-production, which is one of the most important stages of what I like to say, discovering the story. We don't craft stories. We rarely come in with, unless we're filming a commercial, we don't really come in with a storyboard or a narrative arc already established. We create space in pre-production to ask the questions that help us understand where the story is. And a lot of times, these are conversations where people are pouring out their triumphs and their challenges, and we're taking notes and just digesting and downloading all of it. And on the other side of that, there's a level of communication that happens with pre-production to really make sure that we understand the ins and outs of that story, to be able to make sure that what is asked on camera are questions that set the viewer up or set the subject up for success.
Right.
We want to make sure that we aren't just coming into the space. Oh man, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. But you're not exploiting.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I am hearing as you're talking through this, which reminds me of a concept we've mentioned a lot on this podcast, is, at the end of the day, a ton of carbon, not very interesting to talk about.
One for
Hard
John.
to tell a story about environmental metrics. And so I think one of the great challenges and opportunities for folks in the space of telling climate stories, impact storytelling, is how do you make it centered on people? And a lot of what I hear you saying, Jarami, is that's a great idea and concept, but then you are going deeply into people's
It's a lot of work. right?
And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And just like the sensitivities there. And you don't want to just use these people's lives as spokespeople for a corporation or for a company, right? Like there's so many ways for that to come off poorly. And also, I can imagine at the end of the day, like this is such an intimate experience you're having with these folks. Like ideally, they're proud of it too. Like they want to share it with their friends and neighbors.
Which have an issue they really want to communicate, right?
Absolutely.
That they're passionate about. Exactly.
That's it. And that intersection right there is one of my favorite parts of the work that I lead, because on one hand, I'm able to kind of lean into the needs, the pain points, the problems, goals, challenges of, the everyday ESG professional, the CDFI professional, the financial institution, community impact lead, and walk into a shoot understanding the ethos and the essence of what they're seeking to achieve through the video campaign. But also, let's just say we're featuring a small business owner or a small environmental nonprofit, being able to let them know early on that, yes, I've been hired by this client or this agency to deliver this product, but I want to make sure that we uplift your story in a way that is truly authentic to you and what your day-to-day life, your business operations, your goals, your dreams and aspirations look like. So there's a beautiful balance and tension, and we make sure that the subject understands that we're in their corner too. And honestly, at the end of the day, that campaign is going to soar the more that the story being told is as close to authentic as it can be. And so balancing the needs of both stakeholders and being able to blend them together in a way that creates a piece that could potentially shift people toward greater mindfulness and understanding it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot quicker to just kind of show up and shoot, get the shots, get the questions and keep moving. But I think there's something deeper that can be found and discovered and uplifted when a little bit more care, a little bit more thought is put into the process of engaging with these different stakeholders. And that's what we seek to do.
Well, and so because we're ESG comms folks and we know the reality of pitching these things to clients or our bosses and the like, what's your success rate? What's your strategy for saying to the other stakeholder, no, we want to take a little more time and we want to tell a more authentic story. No, we could do this in 2 hours, but we're going to take a day of shooting and we're going to do pre-prep. Do you ever get pushback on that?
That's a great question. So I would rarely...
And you can say no.
I don't really get pushback because our clients we love our clients.
Yeah, they know who they're getting. They're getting the authentic guy, right?
They know what they're getting, and we're not every organization's cup of tea either,
right?
Because there have been project opportunities that have come our way in the past that I've dug into the creative brief and got on that initial call and asked key questions and kind of got to feel that the approach is a little bit more savioristic, and our creative approach doesn't align. It just wouldn't, it wouldn't mesh. And so there's certain projects that we've had to forego for a lack of missional and just alignment and approach. But the majority of our clients, honestly, it feels weird sometimes to call them clients, when I'm thinking about the B Labs and the beneficials, because we're co-collaborators, bringing our respective strengths and platforms and abilities to the table, meshing them, creating a marriage in which we develop an output that has the potential to shift policy, to drive consumers toward greater mindfulness, to cast light on issues and stories that are often suppressed or overlooked. And so there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of kinetic energy between us and our partners.
It's great.
We often don't receive pushback, but sometimes potential clients or existing clients may come into the project and based upon working with another creative organization, have an assumption that like, in order to get from beginning to end, it only takes X number of meetings or a certain number of shoot days or maybe just 2 videographers. But there's a little bit of a learning journey in the beginning. Sometimes this is most times this is pre-contract to help potential clients understand our process and what engagement looks like. And a lot of times I share that like the lean in is going to be, you're going to lean a little bit more, you might a little, leaning Tower of Pisa, by the end of pre-production, but it's worth it. It's worth it because a story well told, a story told with honor, respect, and care has potential to do things that honestly, I remember one client several years ago shared with me that the video that they had us produce was really to increase viewership and exposure that one of their impact programs was getting. And on the other side of filming, the featured organization shared that like through partnering with Bond Studio, it deepened their gratitude and appreciation for being partnered with our client. It led to new levels of partnership and co-collaboration, just the experience that they had with us, right? And so a lot of times, while the process can be a little bit longer, and I don't want to...
we're not talking 28 extra days, right?
Right. Like, it's pre-production on average is still a 3-week journey. But in the past, I've heard of clients who work with production companies that would just kind of meet a few times, send a videographer out, see what we get, and then cut it up. But so I don't want to scare anybody. It's not a multi-month process often, but through leaning in a little bit more, taking a few extra meetings, being a little bit more strategic, that output can sometimes lead to additional benefits that you might not even expect possible. And that's just the power of video. That's the power of human-centric storytelling. It's not always one-to-one, A to B. Here's the investment. Here's the exact ROI. Sometimes there are unexpected surprises that lead to new levels of impact that potentially couldn't be mentioned before.
Yeah, deepening of relationship, which is very valuable in its own right. On that note, I think we're almost at the end here, but we've been talking a lot about film, so it feels like a relevant last question for you is, what have you been watching besides your own films? It doesn't have to be climate or social impact related, but we've ending these interviews with what folks are reading, what they're watching, what they're listening to. But as a film man yourself,
or do you not watch film because you're like, I see everything,
That's true. Your eyes might need a break.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So answering it honestly, I am not a huge... So, okay, let me give you a little backstory. When I started Bond Studio, I was still working in corporate sustainability, and I had just moved to San Francisco. I had purchased a drone a few months before, and I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland. Grew up in Charlotte a little bit as well. And the naturescapes out in San Francisco absolutely blew my mind. And I was like, all my friends, all my family back at home, they need to see what Yosemite looks like. They need to see what Fort Winston looks like. And so I flew my drone. I eventually bought a DSLR and kind of became known in the area as like kind of this like, environmental content creator who can sometimes shoot your baby shower in your home spot. And like maybe your COVID wedding in Golden Gate Park. And so I was kind of all over the place. So it was a little random. And after I made the pivot out of corporate for a little season of rest, I shared on LinkedIn that I was making this transition. And I saw it initially as kind of a temporary hiatus from the impact sector. I was post 2020, post George Floyd. I was just mentally and emotionally tired and just needed a space to be able to continue to work, but also rest a bit. And so after sharing this publicly, my impact community, they kind of flocked into, they surrounded me And we're like, hey, like we want to hang in there with you. We want to work together with you in this new way. And so in that moment, I was like, okay, I love this, but I went to NC State for environmental science, not film. And I'm just one person. And so that was when I recognized that I needed to expand Bond Studio from just me, the freelancer, to a company. And I needed a team. And thankfully, I was surrounded by so many creative friends in the Bay Area, LA and beyond. But we just kind of leaned in and started surrounding these projects. And so circling back to your question, I don't have a deep film background. And so I couldn't tell you, I don't have a laundry list of directors and
Kurosawa films that you're like watching late at night.
Is there anything good on Netflix that's like helping you get through your travels? Like, it's funny, we ask people this question and they're like, oh, I need to have like a really good answer. And they're like, oh no.
And I'm like, no, like, I'm watching 70s detective series as my comfort food. And
no. I just finished the new season of Hacks, you know? We're all using comedy or whatever. So
I love it. Well, I'll give you two things. Right now, I'm watching Night Agent. I love a good thriller.
Ooh.
I love to be on the edge of my seat at 11 p.m. before a work day when I should be winding down.
Nope. Not for me. Not for me, sir. Not for me.
And I'm going to put in a plug for my favorite football team. I've been locked in on the playoffs. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but the Washington Commanders are finally back. And that's been a joyous experience.
Yes, so many ways they're back.
Exactly. So I was pretty locked in on the NFL playoffs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Enjoyed that. So I wish I had a little bit more of a refined film answer for you, but
nope, not at all.
That's all.
Nope. We got all into the Mets and their goofy season this last. I was in. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but they had the OMG, the guy who had the Latin Billboard hit. They had the Lucky Pumpkin. They had Grimace. I mean, it was more the goofiness of it. So yeah, I'm all about the goofy sports Cinderella dream as well. Like, bring it on. I love it. So
I love it.
It's storytelling, right? Sports figured out how to do it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jarami, for joining us today on Engaging ESG. It was such a joy to have you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jennifer. Wonderful work that you all are leading, and it's been fun hanging out. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? Email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.